Dr. Olivia Washington stood at the podium of the Chicago Medical Conference, her voice steady and confident as she presented her groundbreaking research on pediatric neurosurgery. The grand ballroom of the Hilton was packed with hundreds of medical professionals, but she commanded the room with the same grace she brought to the operating theater. At the back of the room, Marcus Bennett slipped in quietly through the double doors. He was running late, having just flown in on his private jet for a different tech conference happening in the same hotel. The familiar voice flowing through the speakers made him freeze mid-step. Even after 15 years, you would recognize that voice anywhere. Marcus found an empty seat, his heart pounding as he took in the sight of her. Olivia had aged like fine wine. Her natural hair was styled in elegant twists, and she wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that spoke of success. She was no longer the young pre-med student he'd left behind at Howard University, but an accomplished woman who had clearly made her mark in the world. As Olivia clicked through her presentation slides, she scanned the audience, something she always did to maintain engagement. Her eyes passed over the familiar face in the back row, then snapped back with sudden recognition. For a split second, her practiced composure wavered. The clicker in her hand trembled slightly, but she quickly recovered, finishing her presentation without missing a beat. And that concludes my presentation on innovative approaches to pediatric brain tumor removal. Are there any questions? Olivia asked, her professional mask firmly back in place. Several hands shot up, and she handled the complex medical queries with expertise. Marcus watched in awe, remembering how she used to practice presentations in their tiny college apartment, using him as her test audience. Back then, she would get so nervous she'd pace holes in their carpet. After the cue and a session, Olivia was immediately surrounded by colleagues and admirers. Marcus stood up, straightening his expensive suit, a far cry from the threadbare jeans and t-shirts he'd worn in college. He debated whether to approach her or slip away unnoticed. The decision was made for him when Dr. James Chen, an old college friend who now sat on the hospital board, spotted him. "Marcus Bennett, what brings the tech genius to a medical conference?" James called out, loud enough to turn heads, including Olivia's. The small crowd around Olivia parted as Marcus walked over, drawn forward by both James's greeting and Olivia's magnetic presence. 15 years of success and confidence seemed to evaporate as he met her eyes up close. "Dr. Washington," he said softly, extending his hand. "Your presentation was impressive." Olivia took his hand briefly, her touch professional but her eyes guarded. "Mr. Bennett, this is certainly unexpected. I wasn't aware you had an interest in neurosurgery." "I don't," he admitted. "I'm here for the Tech Innovation Summit on the 3rd floor. Pure coincidence." James looked between them, suddenly remembering their history. "Oh right, you two dated at Howard, didn't you?" The tension in the air thickened. Several nearby doctors pretended not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. "Ancient history," Olivia said smoothly, checking her elegant watch. "If you'll excuse me, I have another panel to attend." As she turned to leave, Marcus spoke up. "Olivia, wait. Could we maybe grab coffee? Catch up a bit?" She paused, her back still turned to him. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Finally, she half-turned, her expression carefully neutral. "I have a very full schedule this week, Mr. Bennett, but my assistant can check if there's an opening." She pulled out a business card from her leather portfolio and handed it to him. "You can have your people contact my people." With that, she walked away, her heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. Marcus stood there, holding her card like it was made of gold. The contact information was embossed in silver. Dr. Olivia Washington, MD, PhD, head of pediatric neurosurgery. James clapped him on the shoulder. "Still the same Olivia, brilliant and formidable. You know, after you left." But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was watching Olivia's retreating figure, remembering the last time he'd watched her walk away. Back then, he'd been the one doing the leaving, choosing his dreams over their love. Now, standing in his custom-made Italian shoes, with billions in the bank and tech empires at his command, Marcus Bennett felt just as lost as that college dropout who'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Back in his luxury suite at the Four Seasons, Marcus sat at the window overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. Olivia's business card lay on the glass coffee table in front of him, and his mind drifted back to 15 years ago at Howard University. He remembered their first meeting in the campus library. Olivia had been surrounded by thick medical textbooks, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an oversized Howard sweater. He'd been looking for a quiet place to work on his coding, and the only free seat was at her table. She glanced up, gave him a smile that made his heart skip, and moved some of her books to make space. That simple moment had changed everything. Their love story had bloomed quickly after that. Late-night study sessions turned into deep conversations about their dreams. Olivia wanted to become a surgeon, to heal children and give back to her community. Marcus was passionate about technology, convinced he could create something revolutionary if given the chance. Marcus pulled out his phone and Googled her name. Articles and accolades filled the screen. She'd done everything she'd said she would. Graduated top of her class from medical school, completed her residency at Johns Hopkins, and now ran one of the most prestigious pediatric neurosurgery departments in the country. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the hotel room's phone. "I've contacted Dr. Washington's office. They've offered a 15-minute slot tomorrow at 8 a.m. at the Starbucks in the hotel lobby." 15 minutes, Marcus repeated softly. How could 15 minutes make up for 15 years? He remembered the day everything fell apart. The day he'd received the email from a major tech investor in Silicon Valley, offering to fund his startup idea. It was the chance of a lifetime, but it meant leaving school immediately. Leaving Olivia. They had their biggest fight that night in their small apartment. The same apartment where they'd shared their first kiss, where they talked about marriage and their future together. "You're throwing everything away," Olivia had shouted, tears streaming down her face. "You're 2 semesters away from graduating. This is my chance. Liv. Come with me to California. We can start fresh there." "I can't leave, Marcus. My medical school applications are all set. My life is here." He packed his bags that night while she slept, left a note saying he was sorry, that he loved her but had to follow his dreams. He'd been a coward, unable to face her pain, her disappointment. Marcus stood up and walked to the minibar, pouring himself a glass of water. The man in the reflection looked nothing like that scared young college dropout. His casual clothes had been replaced by designer suits. His old beaten-up backpack was now a leather briefcase that cost more than his entire college wardrobe. His company, Bennett Tech Solutions, was worth billions. He created the revolutionary software he dreamed about, changed the way people interacted with technology, but success had come with a price. Every woman he'd dated since Olivia felt shallow in comparison. They were attracted to his wealth, his status, not the man who still stayed up late coding because he loved it, who still got excited about new tech like a kid at Christmas. His phone buzzed, a message from James Chen. "You really messed up with Olivia back then." She was devastated. Threw herself into her studies even harder. Turned down every guy who asked her out for years. Marcus's throat tightened. He typed back, "I know I messed up. I've regretted it every day since." James replied quickly, "She's different now. Stronger. More guarded. Don't expect the same Olivia you knew in college." Marcus looked at the time, 11 p.m. In 9 hours, he'd have 15 minutes to try to explain 15 years of regret to the woman he'd never stopped loving. The woman who'd probably spent all those years learning to hate him. He walked to his laptop and opened a folder he never showed anyone. Inside were photos from their college days, Olivia laughing at campus parties, studying in their apartment, wearing his too big Howard sweater. Her smile back then was open, trusting, full of love. Today, when she looked at him, that smile was replaced by a polite, professional mask. Marcus wondered if 15 minutes would be enough to even crack that surface, let alone find out if any of the old Olivia, his Olivia, was still there. At precisely 7:55 a.m., Olivia walked into the hotel's Starbucks. She wore a crisp white blouse and black pencil skirt, her hair styled in a professional updo. Several heads turned to watch her. She had that effect on people, a natural grace that demanded attention. Marcus was already there, having arrived 20 minutes early. He'd secured a quiet corner table and ordered her favorite drink from college, a caramel macchiato with an extra shot of espresso. He wondered if her taste had changed, like everything else. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," Olivia said, taking the seat across from him. Her eyes fell on the coffee cup. "You remembered." "Some things you don't forget," he replied softly, watching as she took a careful sip. How have you been, Olivia? Busy, successful, but you already know that, don't you? I'm sure you've Googled me by now. Her tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. Marcus nodded. Your work with children is amazing. You're changing lives. That was always the plan. She paused, studying him. You've done well for yourself, too. Bennett Tech Solutions is everywhere these days. The small talk felt like walking on eggshells. Both of them were dancing around the elephant in the room, 15 years of unspoken words hanging between them. Olivia, that's how I left. She held up her hand, stopping him. Marcus, I have exactly 12 minutes left in this meeting. Let's not waste them on ancient history. Then why did you agree to meet me? The question caught her off guard. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, showing a glimpse of uncertainty underneath. Professional courtesy, she said finally. We move in similar circles now. It's better to clear the air. Marcus leaned forward. Is that really all this is? Olivia's phone buzzed, a text message. She glanced at it, then stood up abruptly. I'm sorry, there's an emergency at the hospital. A young patient needs immediate surgery. Wait, Marcus said, standing too. Can I see you again? Maybe dinner? Olivia gathered her things, but paused. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Liv. Just dinner. As old friends. The use of her old nickname made her freeze. For a second, he saw pain flash across her face before the mask returned. I have your number from your assistant, she said finally. If I have time, I'll think about it. She left quickly, leaving behind half-finished coffee and the lingering scent of her perfume. Marcus sat back down, running his hands through his hair in frustration. His phone buzzed, a message from James. How did it go? She barely gave me a chance to explain, Marcus typed back. What did you expect? A warm welcome? You broke her heart, man. Marcus stared at the message, then made a decision. He called his assistant. Cancel all my meetings for the next month. I'm staying in Chicago. Sir? What about the Tokyo merger? Handle it virtually. This is more important. Over the next week, Marcus carefully orchestrated his approach. He didn't contact Olivia directly. That would only push her away. Instead, he made strategic moves. He donated state-of-the-art surgical equipment to her hospital's pediatric ward, but anonymously. He attended medical charity events where he knew she'd be present, but kept his distance, only exchanging polite nods. He learned her routine. How she got coffee every morning at 7 a.m., how she jogged in Grant Park on Sundays. Not to stalk her, but to understand the woman she'd become. Through careful conversations with hospital staff and mutual acquaintances, he learned more. How she worked tirelessly, often sleeping at the hospital during difficult cases. How she mentored young black medical students, especially women. How she never talked about her personal life. You're being creepy, James told him over dinner one evening. I'm being thorough, Marcus corrected. I messed this up once by being impulsive. This time, I need to do it right. And what exactly are you trying to do? Marcus looked out the restaurant window, watching the Chicago sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. I'm trying to prove to her that I'm not that scared kid anymore. That I'm someone worthy of a second chance. He paused. Even if it takes another 15 years. 2 weeks after their brief coffee meeting, Olivia was performing a complex brain surgery when she noticed something unusual about the new surgical equipment. The precision and design seemed familiar. It reminded her of the interface systems Bennett Tech was famous for. After the successful surgery, she made some inquiries and discovered the truth about the anonymous donation. That evening, she stormed into the hotel restaurant where she knew Marcus was staying, finding him at the bar. Stop it, she said firmly, causing him to look up from his laptop. Stop trying to buy your way back into my life. Marcus closed his laptop slowly. Would you like to sit down? No, I would not like to sit down. I want you to stop whatever game you're playing. It's not a game, Olivia. Really? Then what do you call showing up at every charity event I attend? Making anonymous donations to my department. Having your driver coincidentally offer me rides when it rains. Marcus had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was trying to help. I don't need your help. I didn't need it 15 years ago, and I certainly don't need it now. The other diners were starting to stare. Marcus gestured to a private dining room nearby. Please, can we talk somewhere quieter? After a moment's hesitation, Olivia followed him. As soon as the door closed behind them, she let loose. Do you know what it was like? Waking up to find a note? A note, Marcus. After 2 years together, that's all I was worth to you. I was wrong, he said quietly. I was young and scared. So was I. Her voice cracked slightly. I was terrified about medical school, about our future, about everything. But I didn't run away. I stayed and faced it. Marcus sat down heavily in one of the chairs. You're right. I was a coward. And now what? You're successful. You're bored. So you thought you'd come back and fix your old mistake? That's not fair. Fair? Olivia laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Do you know what happened after you left? I couldn't focus on my studies. My grades started slipping. I almost lost my medical school acceptance. Marcus looked stricken. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You were too busy becoming a billionaire to care about the wreckage you left behind. She paced the room, years of pent-up anger finally finding release. I had to rebuild myself from scratch. I stopped believing in love, in relationships, in anything except my work. Do you know how many good men I pushed away because I couldn't trust anyone after you? I'm sorry, Marcus whispered. Sorry doesn't cut it. You don't get to waltz back into my life with your money and your influence and your grand gestures and expect everything to be okay. Then tell me what to do, he said, standing up. Tell me how to make it right. Olivia stopped pacing and looked at him, really looked at him. The successful businessman exterior couldn't quite hide the traces of the young man she'd once loved. That's just it, Marcus. We can't make it right. What's done is done. We're different people now. Are we? He stepped closer. Because I still see the same fire in you, the same passion for helping others, the same strength that made me fall in love with you in the first place. Don't, she warned, stepping back. Don't try to romanticize the past. I'm not. I'm looking at the present, at the incredible woman standing in front of me, telling me exactly what I deserve to hear. Olivia felt tears threatening and blinked them back angrily. I have a surgery in the morning. I need to go. As she reached for the door, Marcus spoke again. I'll stop the donations. No more charity events, no more drivers. But Olivia, I'm not giving up, not this time. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. Why now, Marcus? After all these years, why come back now? Because success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with, and no one has ever measured up to you. Olivia opened the door but didn't leave immediately. That's your problem, Marcus. You're still thinking about what you want, what you need. You haven't changed as much as you think. She left him standing there, her words echoing in the empty room, and for the first time since becoming a billionaire, Marcus Bennett felt truly poor. A month after their confrontation, Olivia was reviewing patient files in her office when her assistant knocked on the door. Dr. Washington, there's a situation at the free clinic in Inglewood. They're trying to reach you. The free clinic was Olivia's passion project, a place where she provided medical care to underserved communities. She grabbed her phone and dialed immediately. Dr. Washington, a frantic voice answered, our computer system crashed. We've lost access to all our patient records, and we have 30 children scheduled for checkups today. Olivia's heart sank. The clinic ran on an old, dated system. She'd been meaning to upgrade it, but hadn't found the funding yet. As she rushed to her car, she made several calls to companies, but none could help immediately. In desperation, she called the one person she'd been avoiding. Marcus answered on the first ring. Olivia, the free clinic system crashed. I need help. These kids. Text me the address. I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, Olivia pulled up to the clinic to find Marcus already there, sleeves rolled up, working with 2 tech specialists from his company. He brought new laptops and servers. The old system was salvageable, he explained without looking up from his laptop. We're restoring the data now. Give us 10 more minutes. True to his word, the system was back up, better than before. Marcus had not only fixed the problem but installed new security measures and backup systems. How much do I owe you? Olivia asked as the last patient left that evening. Nothing. This isn't about money. He looked around the small clinic. This place means a lot to you, doesn't it? These kids have nobody else. Many of them had never seen a doctor before coming here. She paused. Thank you for today. You didn't have to come yourself. Yes, I did. He met her eyes. You asked for help. That's not something you do lightly. Over the next few weeks, Marcus became a quiet presence at the clinic. He didn't make grand gestures or announcements. Instead, he simply showed up, fixing technical issues, upgrading systems, teaching the staff better ways to manage their digital records. One evening, as Olivia was leaving, she found him in the break room, sharing pizza with the cleaning staff, listening to their stories about their families. You're different here, she observed after they'd left. What do you mean? You're not trying to be the billionaire tech genius. You're just helping. He shrugged. Maybe I finally learned something about what really matters. Days turned into weeks. Marcus never pushed for more than professional interaction, but he was always there when needed. He started a coding class for the clinic's teenage patients, teaching them skills that could change their futures. Olivia watched him work with the kids, patient and encouraging, so different from the impulsive young man who'd left her all those years ago. One rainy Saturday, she found him fixing the clinic's ancient printer. You know, she said, leaning against the doorframe, most billionaires just write checks. Most billionaires haven't spent 15 years regretting the biggest mistake of their lives. He didn't look up from the printer. Marcus, I'm not saying that to pressure you, he continued. I'm saying it because it's true. Money, success, none of it filled the void left by my choices. Finally, he looked at her. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a second chance. I'm just trying to be someone worthy of the faith you once had in me. Olivia felt something shift inside her, a crack in the walls she built so carefully. Would you like to get coffee? She asked suddenly. Real coffee, not a 15-minute meeting. Marcus stood slowly, trying to hide his surprise. Are you sure? No, she admitted. But these kids trust you, and they're pretty good judges of character. Tomorrow morning? That little cafe on Michigan Avenue. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. As she walked to her car that evening, Olivia realized something had changed. The anger that had fueled her for 15 years had begun to fade, replaced by something else. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. Sometimes, she thought, the longest road to trust isn't built on grand gestures or passionate declarations, but on quiet moments of genuine change. The emergency call came at 2 a.m. Olivia was jolted awake by her phone's urgent ringing. The hospital's main surgical imaging system had crashed in the middle of preparing for a critical pediatric brain surgery scheduled for 6 a.m. We can't postpone this one, Dr. Washington, our head nurse explained. The patient's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without thinking, Olivia called Marcus. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he said immediately, his voice alert despite the hour. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Marcus already there, surrounded by computers and equipment he'd brought from his office. He worked intensely, fingers flying over keyboards, muttering technical terms to his team over the phone. Talk to me, Marcus. Can you fix it? Olivia asked, watching the clock tick closer to surgery time. The system's core processor is failing. We need to transfer all the imaging data to a new system, but maintain perfect resolution. He didn't look up from his work. I'm not leaving until it's done. 4 hours later, Olivia stood in the operating room, looking at crystal-clear brain scans on the new system Marcus had somehow created overnight. The surgery was successful, and a 7-year-old boy would live to see another day. After the surgery, she found Marcus in the hospital cafe, still working on his laptop, empty coffee cups scattered around him. The boy's going to make it, she said, sitting across from him. Marcus looked up, dark circles under his eyes. Thank God. I was worried we wouldn't get the imaging clarity you needed. You haven't slept at all, have you? Neither have you. He smiled tiredly. Some things never change. You still get that same look when you're focused on saving someone. And you still get that intense expression when you're solving a problem. She paused. Thank you, Marcus. What you did today. Hey, remember that time in college when I stayed up 3 nights straight trying to fix your laptop before your big anatomy presentation? The memory hit her unexpectedly. You survived on energy drinks and determination. And you brought me soup and made me sleep for 2 days straight after. They shared a laugh, and for a moment, the years between them seemed to melt away. Then Olivia's pager beeped, Another patient needed her. "I should go," she said, standing. "Olivia?" Marcus called as she turned to leave. "Would you have dinner with me tonight? To celebrate the successful surgery?" She hesitated. Their coffee meetings over the past few weeks had been carefully casual, safe. Dinner felt more significant. "I know a quiet place," he added. "No fancy restaurants, no expensive wines. Just good food and conversation." Looking at him, rumpled clothes, tired eyes, still working to help her patients, Olivia made a decision. "Okay, but I choose the place." That evening, she took him to a small soul food restaurant in her neighborhood. It was nothing like the upscale places Marcus usually frequented, but his face lit up when he tasted the cornbread. "This reminds me of what your mom used to make," he said softly. She gave them the recipe. Olivia smiled. "Mom always liked you, you know, even after everything. She said you were just a lost boy trying to find his way." Marcus set down his fork. She was right. I was lost, chasing dreams I thought would make me whole. And did they? The dreams? Yes, but success without someone to share it with. He shook his head. That's just empty achievement. Olivia studied him across the table. The Marcus I knew would have said the achievement was enough. The Marcus you knew was an idiot. He met her eyes. The Marcus sitting here now knows what really matters. They talked late into the night, about their lives, their work, their dreams, both achieved and abandoned. For the first time since his return, neither of them checked the time or made excuses to leave. As they walked to their cars, Marcus stopped under a streetlight. "Thank you for tonight," he said, "for giving me a chance to just talk." Olivia looked up at him, seeing both the boy she'd loved and the man he'd become. "Maybe," she said carefully, "we both needed to heal old wounds before we could create something new." She drove home that night feeling lighter, as if a weight she'd carried for 15 years was finally beginning to lift. Sometimes, she realized, healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from understanding how it led you to where you needed to be. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Olivia found herself walking through Grant Park with Marcus. Over the past few weeks, their meetings had become more frequent, more natural. Today, they'd run into each other at the free clinic and decided to take a walk. "Remember when we used to study here?" Marcus asked, gesturing to a bench near the fountain. "You mean when I studied, and you tried to distract me?" Olivia smiled at the memory. They sat down on the bench, watching families enjoy the late summer day. A comfortable silence fell between them, until Marcus spoke again. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. "About the day I left." Olivia tensed. "Marcus, we don't have to. Please, I've carried this for 15 years. He took a deep breath. "That morning, before I left, I watched you sleeping. You looked so peaceful, so sure of your path. And I was terrified." "Of what?" "Of holding you back. The investor who wanted to fund my startup. He told me I had to leave immediately. No delays, no distractions. I knew if I talked to you about it, you'd offer to try long distance, to support my dreams while pursuing yours." Olivia's hands tightened in her lap. "Isn't that what partners do?" "Yes, but I was young and stupid. I convinced myself that I'd only drag you down, that you deserved someone who could match your drive, your focus." He laughed bitterly. "I thought I was being noble, setting you free." "You didn't set me free," Olivia said quietly. "You just broke my heart." "I know. And the worst part? Every success, every achievement felt hollow. I'd look around my empty penthouse or sit in board meetings worth billions, and all I could think about was you." A child's laughter rang out across the park. They both watched as a little girl chased bubbles, her parents watching proudly. "I dated other men," Olivia said suddenly. "Good men, successful men. But none of them what? None of them understood me like you did. Even when we were broke college students, you got me. My dreams, my fears, my drive to help others." Marcus turned to face her. "I never stopped loving you, Olivia. Not for a single day." She stood up abruptly, walking to the fountain's edge. Marcus followed but kept his distance. "Do you know what hurts the most?" she asked, watching the water spray. "That you didn't trust me enough to make my own choice. You decided for both of us. I was wrong. So wrong." His voice cracked. "Success means nothing without someone to share it with. And no woman has ever compared to you." Olivia turned to look at him, tears in her eyes. I built my whole life around never being that vulnerable again, never letting anyone have that kind of power over me. I know, and you built something amazing. You're changing lives, saving children, making the world better. He stepped closer. I'm not asking you to tear down those walls. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I've changed, to show you that I can be worthy of your trust again. A jogger passed by, and they both stepped aside. When Olivia spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I never stopped loving you either. I just got better at hiding it. Marcus reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. What are you afraid of? He asked gently. That you'll leave again, that this time I won't survive it. Olivia Washington, he said, turning her to face him. I spent 15 years building an empire, but I'd give it all up in a heartbeat if it meant never seeing that pain in your eyes again. She studied his face, searching for any trace of the boy who'd left her. Instead, she saw a man who'd learned from his mistakes, who'd grown into someone stronger, wiser. I can't promise I won't be scared, she admitted, but maybe we could be scared together this time. Marcus squeezed her hand. Together sounds good to me. As the sun began to set over Chicago's skyline, they walked back through the park, neither rushing to let go of the other's hand. Sometimes the hardest truths take years to come out, but when they do, they can bridge even the widest gaps between hearts. 6 months after their conversation in Grant Park, Olivia sat in her office, looking at the framed photo on her desk. It showed her and Marcus at the Free Clinic's fundraising gala, both smiling genuinely at the camera. The event had raised millions for pediatric care in underserved communities. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Marcus stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. Ready for lunch? He asked, setting her caramel macchiato on the desk. Just finishing up some paperwork. She signed the last document and stood up. Where are we going today? Actually, I thought we could go back to where everything started. 20 minutes later, they walked into Howard University's library. The campus had changed over the years, but this building remained largely the same. Marcus led her to a specific table near the back. This is where we first met, he said, pulling out a chair for her. Right here. Olivia sat down, touching the worn wooden surface. You were wearing that ratty blue hoodie, and you had about 20 medical books spread out everywhere. He smiled, but you still made space for a random guy with a laptop. Not so random anymore. She reached for his hand across the table. Their relationship had evolved slowly over the past months, rebuilding trust one day at a time. I have something to show you, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. He opened an email and handed it to her. Olivia read it, her eyes widening. You're selling your company? Stepping down as CEO, he corrected. I'm keeping my shares and board position, but I'm done with the day-to-day operations. But why? You love running Bennett Tech. I do, but I love you more. He squeezed her hand. I'm opening a tech education center here in D.C., focusing on underprivileged youth. And, he paused, I bought a house here. Olivia stared at him. You're moving back to D.C. If that's okay with you, the house has a great home office for when I need to handle board meetings, and it's only 10 minutes from your hospital. Marcus. I'm not asking you to move in, he added quickly. I know we're taking things slow. I just want to be where you are. No more flying back and forth, no more schedule juggling. Tears formed in Olivia's eyes. You're giving up California for me? I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing us. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. Remember this? Olivia unfolded it carefully. It was a list they'd made in college, their dreams written in young, hopeful handwriting. Her goals were all checked off. Medical school, becoming a surgeon, helping children. His tech empire dreams were checked too. But at the bottom, in both their handwriting, was one unchecked item. Grow old together. We wrote this right here, at this table, Marcus said softly. Everything else on that list, we achieved separately. But this last one, I'd like to achieve it with you. Are you proposing? Olivia asked, her voice trembling slightly. Not yet. When I do, you'll know. He smiled. Right now, I'm just showing you that I'm all in. No more running, no more choosing dreams over love. You're my dream, Olivia Washington. You always were. She stood up and walked around the table, pulling him into a tight embrace. Around them, students studied quietly, unaware of the moment of reconstruction happening in their midst. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "The boy you were, the man you become, and everyone in between." They left the library hand in hand, walking across the campus where their story began. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows behind them. "So," Marcus said as they reached her car, "your place or mine for dinner?" Olivia looked at him, successful, humble, and finally at peace with himself. "How about our place?" His face lit up with understanding. "You mean?" "Yes, I'll move in with you." She laughed at his expression. "We've wasted enough time apart, don't you think?" As they drove through the streets of D.C., past their old haunts and toward their new future, both realized that love, like life, isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something new from the pieces, something stronger and more beautiful than before. Some loves aren't meant to be forgotten. They're meant to be reconstructed, rebuilt with wisdom, understanding, and the kind of trust that only time and growth can create.